Excelsior!
Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 14 of Excelsior on JoyClicks. I'm your moderator, Christian Buckley. Joining me this week is Jack Martin.
Hello, happy to be here.
Yeah, happy to have you back. We're back in the groove of things. And also, via satellite, is Pat Maroney.
Aren't we all via satellite?
Technically, yeah. I realized that after I said it.
I'm just in a car.
You're on location.
Yeah, that's true. I'm not on location. I'm in the field.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, to kick things off, we're going to do another new game. Because last week was a mad scramble for an introduction. So this week, we're playing a game that will presumably go for the rest of the run of what we're doing right now with the show. It's called Build a Better Hero. So, I'm going to supply two options, and both of you have to come to an agreement or, sell your case for what the better version of this would be.
Okay.
And whatever aspect we decide on will be thrown into, a melting pot to make our own superhero.
All right,
Okay.
let's do it. I like this.
I get to play this time.
Yeah.
Let's go.
Okay.
I'm not the deciding vote.
Okay. So, Wolverine's healing factor or Spider-Man's spider sense?
Oh, that's
Ooh.
tough.
That is tough.
Because if
I
one's
think-
working right, you don't need the other.
I think the more useful one, personally, is the Wolverine self-healing.
Okay.
Because essentially, if you get shot, you're fine after a little bit.
That's
yeah,
true.
but you
Right,
could be
like-
incapacitated though, right?
Probably. I don't know. I'm sure it changes every once in a while.
Actually, you know what?
The hard and
Spider-Man,
fast rules.
Spider-Man, for having a spider sense, a lot of the time he just turns and gets hit by something. He just notices himself getting hit by something.
Yeah, that's
So,
true. It's every once in a while.
Yeah, so I'm going Wolverines right away.
I think so too. I think that's the
Alright.
most useful.
All right,
All
yeah.
right.
I think once Pat said the point of if you have the healing, you don't need the Spidey sense, that kind of put the nail in the coffin. So there we go. Wolverine's healing factor is the first attribute that our new superhero will have.
Alrighty.
See how that goes in the coming weeks.
This guy's gonna be a tank.
Yeah, definitely.
Are we gonna nerf him at all or something?
Oh, I'm gonna make sure I give you guys some things that are don't make him super powerful. So
Yeah, he has
See how it
Howard the
goes.
Duck's alcoholism. I think
Or
we should
Tony
include
Stark's
some-
alcoholism.
which one's
It's
more
a-
severe, Howard the Duck or Tony Stark?
Well, I
I
would
don't
say
know,
Howard
Howard's
the
a
Duck because
yeah,
he
he's
is
a
in
duck.
fact a duck.
Yeah,
So.
that's true. Kicking things off with the news, we have a smaller, kind of not a huge deal of a story because this is something that's been done before. But Avengers Endgame beat Avatar at the domestic box office. So Avengers Endgame has earned $781 million in the United States against Avatar's $760 million. But I don't think that matters much yet because I'm pretty sure the highest grossing domestically, according to Box Office Mojo at least, is The Force Awakens, and it has 900 something million just in the US, so I don't know if
Yeah.
Endgame can beat that. But
Yeah, that's funny to think about because worldwide, obviously, Avatar used to be number one. And you
it
think
still is
Yeah, it's
total.
still
didn't Endgame already pass it worldwide?
No, it passed it domestically.
Oh, okay.
it's got a pretty huge lead on Endgame still, right?
Not by, I think it's 200.
yeah, it's 200 million.
Well, do you think that it would be beaten by the end of the summer or no?
I think there's a chance. We talked about this a little last week, but I feel like I'm not as hopeful as I was when the movie first came out and all the info about what it was making was happening. But I think it's still possible, especially if there's a re-release later in the year. But I think it's still within reason.
Yeah, I think it's entirely possible, but it's very possible that it doesn't. So we'll see. But I hope so. I think it kind of deserves it.
Yeah, it does.
I think so too.
So yeah, there's really not much to say about it, just because it's another week, another record at this point. But,
Yeah.
I'm interested to see how Spider-Man does, because the top 10 highest grossing all time, I think a lot of it is Marvel at this point. So
Mhm.
I'm curious to see if Spider-Man 2 the third Spider-Man 2, does any crazy records for obviously 4th of July week because it got moved up to July 2nd. So yeah, we'll see how Marvel keeps up the record.
Spider-Man 3 is on there at some point, isn't it?
The top, like the highest grossing.
It's like it's up there. I'm going through the list right now. I'm trying to look for it. But I remember Spider-Man 3 doing really well.
Pre-MCU Spider-Man 3, I think, was the highest grossing movie of all time.
Yeah.
Really?
For a period, I think I could be wrong on that, but I'm pretty sure. Actually, no, because Titanic. There was a period of time where Spider-Man 3 was one of the top, like 3 probably.
I'm looking at top 50 and I can't find it.
That surprises me because it's like it's one of the most universally disliked movies.
Well, yeah, but like
portions of it.
Pre-release, it was hyped up because like you just walked off Spider-Man 2, and I think at that point you had the kind of bad X-Men movie, so like Spider-Man was the last thing up there.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
We'll see how the streak continues.
I think it definitely has the possibility. It probably will be the highest grossing Spider-Man movie of all time.
I think so. You would think so, right? Because like Homecoming got a lot of the goodwill back.
Yeah.
Because I don't think was Homecoming the highest grossing Spider-Man movie.
I don't know the answer to that, but I could see it. I don't know if it would be because it's technically the first in a new series.
Yeah, so I'm not sure, but because I feel like I've seen some graphs. I don't know if this includes Homecoming, but like the Spider-Man movies have been going on like a downward trend for how much money they make.
Really? Okay.
I think so.
Well, Spider-Man, the very first Spider-Man like ever, not like the first one ever, but like what year was like 2002, 2001. Ended up like it had one of the highest opening weekends of all time.
Yeah, that was one of those two. For sure.
So I don't know if necessarily Homecoming would beat that.
So the rank goes Spider-Man 3. This is worldwide. Okay. Spider-Man 3, Spider-Man Homecoming, Spider-Man 1, Spider-Man 2, Amazing Spider-Man 2, and Into the Spider-Verse.
Into the Spider-Verse is last?
This is worldwide unadjusted.
That's still upsetting.
I don't know what that scale means either. So.
Yeah, I don't either. But that is a little weird when you think about it. But I don't know, animated movies?
I mean, like, animated movies have a stigma against them.
Yeah, I think that's probably why.
But shout out, I didn't include this, but Into the Spider-Verse is coming to Netflix in June.
Yeah. I've only seen that once.
It's a great movie to be on Netflix just for how easy it is to watch it.
Yeah, I want to see it again. I've said it on the show before, but when I saw it in theaters, I just recently come back from Dublin after studying there, and I was like falling asleep because the time change was like absolutely messing me up. So, which is really unfortunate because I liked what I saw, but I don't really.
Yeah, that movie's so good.
Can't really speak to it. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a good transition though because we were just talking about Spider-Verse arriving at things, or at Netflix, I should say. We have something that's leaving us forever next week. As you may or may not know, if you follow the games industry, Telltale went out of business late last year.
Mm-hmm.
They are notable for their licensed story games. They have 2 real good Batman games. The Wolf Among Us, I will never stop recommending that thing.
Oh, the best Telltale game, Christian?
Yeah, 100% the best Telltale game. And most notable, they did the Walking Dead series.
Mm-hmm.
So as of next week, on GOG.com and I think on Steam, all Telltale games are getting pulled from the storefront.
Really?
So,
really,
I'm assuming that means it's also going to be getting pulled from Xbox Live, PlayStation Network, and whatever's on the Switch.
I'd assume so too.
The reason I'm bringing this up, they did a Guardians of the Galaxy game.
Wow, I didn't even know that. Or
Yeah,
I forgot about that totally.
Either.
Yeah, so they did a Guardians of the Galaxy Telltale game. I think 5 episodes. It came out, I want to say 2016 or 2017. 2017, I think. And I never got around to it, so I'm probably going to pick that up before it gets banned from being listed forever or sold.
Yeah, might as well.
And what's sad about those games, at least from my knowledge, most of them I imagine are only digital, only available digitally. I think maybe like the first. I think The Walking Dead is probably physical, and you could probably pick up like a few other games physically. But
I've seen The Walking Dead in a GameStop before.
Yeah.
You can buy it.
Yeah. But those games are so focused on being like digital, and like the way they release is like, I mean, the way they used to release is kind of it should have been like monthly or whatever, but like it came out like whenever it came out,
like
essentially.
the span of a year for a full series, pretty much.
Yeah. So
But-
that's really sad.
I'm not gonna lie, I hated those games.
Really?
Because I liked them, but I always just like destroyed my relationships with people, and it always came back to bite me.
I wasn't the
Yeah.
biggest Telltale guy either. I loved Wolf Among Us, but that was kind of it for me personally. I want to play Batman. I have it on PS4, but that's
Good,
it.
yeah. Wolf Among Us, I love to death. Their Batman is one of my favorite versions of Batman since like, no, in at least the last decade. It's one of my favorite versions, if not my favorite version of Batman that somebody made. I like it a lot. Especially season 2. It's a big focus on exploring Bruce, but this is a Marvel podcast. Guardians of the Galaxy, I'm probably gonna buy it. I want to check it out at some point just to see their take on those characters, because it's weird. I read some of the reviews when it came out, and it was a weird reception of like, it's kind of inspired by the MCU, but it's still like comic-y, and Thanos is in it, and he's not the Thanos you'd expect him to be. So I'm interested to see what it is, because I think they have a lot of very clever writing. So
Yeah, definitely. And this is another example of games getting lost to the ages. We talked about what did we talk about last year? It was like last episode was Spider-Man, some sort of Spider-Man.
Ultimate Alliance 1 and 2, yeah.
Yeah, so that you can't find those unless you like look for them at like on eBay or something, or like very famously PT.
Are you referring to like the Amazing Spider-Man games, or like the original?
No, the Ultimate Alliance 1 and 2.
Oh, okay.
Those are delisted now. But yeah,
That's
I think
really sad.
I've seen Guardians of the Galaxy on disc before.
Oh, cool.
So it's probably super hard to find though. So like we said, eBay is probably the better option. I don't know about GameStop or anything, but
Yeah.
if you're interested, I would get on that, because by the time this episode's out, it's probably like a matter of days, if not already gone. So
Never go to GameStop. I'm gonna make that statement for us. We're an anti-GameStop podcast.
That's fair. I can join you on that one.
I don't want $3 for my brand new game.
Well, the thing is, I'm mostly digital now, so I don't even trade stuff
Same.
anymore.
There we go. Anti-game podcast, or anti-GameStop podcast.
There is a little bit of better news. We have 2 more news stories left. Next up is a brand new comic series from Marvel. It is called Agents of Atlas, and it is an all-Asian/all Asian American superhero team. It is pulling a lot of post-Civil War comics characters that Marvel introduced, including Amadeus Cho, who replaced Bruce Banner as the Hulk, Shang-Chi, who is getting a film adaptation in the future, so it's probably makes sense that they're going to feature him prominently in a new
The next one.
endeavor like this book. And I think it's a total of like 6 or 7 characters, and 2 of them are actually characters that were created for the mobile game Marvel Future Fight. So there's a lot to unpack here.
Yeah.
First
Shang-Chi is the
I have-
only one I know.
I think it's definitely kind of needed, isn't it? I don't think there's a single Asian character in the MCU, is there?
At least not major in the MCU. There's like Wong, and as far as actors and actresses go, I know Palm Clementif or Mantis is Asian and French, but yeah, there's pretty much no Asian representation in the MCU until Shang-Chi coming up. So it makes sense, because Marvel Comics, from what I've followed the news of in the last decade or so, they usually seem to get working in the comics on characters that are a couple years out from being introduced into the MCU. So I think the Guardians had a huge resurgence a year or so before the Guardians film came out. I think Ultron came back, stuff like that. So like they kind of prep and refocus characters they may be introducing in the future through the comics.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So yeah, I'm not familiar with Shang-Chi though. We've talked about this in a couple episodes before.
Yeah.
No idea what his like style, what his deal is. Amadeus Cho I'm a little familiar with, just because of looking into Hulk stuff. He replaced Banner, and I think Banner is back now in the Immortal Hulk. So now Amadeus Cho is called Brawn.
Okay.
So there's a lot of information here, but I think it's cool. I think it's cool that they're creating new teams still.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you think we could see a tease for this in Shang-Chi?
That's what I was gonna bring up.
Yeah.
I kind of would hope so, because I feel like that would just work well for everybody involved. And I wanted to bring up also the fact that we have a surrogate or replacement Hulk now.
Mhm.
You know, if they
That's
introduce
actually
someone
true.
like Amadeus Cho.
Hulk's
That-
borderline. I don't know if Hulk can even fight anymore, can he?
Yeah, I don't know. Like, I'm unsure about the future of like Banner Hulk. He could still be a player with things, but maybe that would work too if they used Amadeus Cho as the new Hulk. Maybe that would get around the whole Universal licensing weird thing.
Ooh, that's a
Remember
good point.
How
Solo
like
Hulk movie now?
yeah, because if there's that appeal of Hulk, because it's Hulk, it's a giant green monster,
Mm-hmm.
and Marvel hasn't been able to or hasn't fully been able to commit or wanting to commit because of the weird Universal thing that I'm not even fully sure how to explain. But I feel like if they had a workaround like this, it would probably, like, I don't see any negative from doing that.
Yeah, I could.
Personally.
That's definitely a good workaround. There's a really cool infographic you could probably find on Google, like that shows like what is owned by Universal
Right, yeah.
and what is owned by Marvel, and it's really weird. Like some characters are in Universal while other characters are in Marvel.
Yeah.
Like I think She-Hulk is in Universal, but like Bruce Banner's like in the middle. Like he's in like, imagine like a Venn diagram. He's like in the middle. It's really strange. But yeah, that'd be cool to have a solo Hulk movie that's fresh, but still like relying on Hulk's powers. I think that'd be really cool.
Yeah.
Sorry, just a weird question. Do they have licensing? Does Universal have licensing rights to Hulk? Because I've like been to Universal before and seen like Hulk roller coasters or whatever, or like Hulk themed stores or whatever.
Right, so Universal Theme Park has the rights to Marvel rides for, I think it might be running out a year or two from now, or this year. But they had like the Hulk ride, they had a Spider-Man thing, but they had a bunch of stuff. But now that's getting reverted back to Disney, and that's a separate deal of rights. On the film side of things, similar to how Sony owns Spider-Man and Venom and any Spider-Man character to make films of, Universal has the rights to distributing Hulk films, but I guess is not a mutual agreement between Universal or Marvel that both of them are happy with, the same way that Sony and Marvel have one.
Okay. Can I share with you a weird fun fact?
Sure.
There's a nightclub in Cancun that has licensing rights to Spider-Man. Like, when I was in Cancun, the club's mascot was Spider-Man. It's like a line with like DJs and lasers and stuff, and then just like a Spider-Man, like a guy just a Spider-Man. And
Hell
I was
yeah.
like, oh, this is weird. That's definitely not Tom Holland.
No.
I know that.
That's
But
crazy.
yeah, it was odd. That's kind of why I asked.
Yeah. Well, Cancun Spider-Man.
Where are you going
Hey,
with this one,
Good
Christian?
luck transitioning that. Yeah.
Cancun Spider-Man is something that we might see in a different multiverse or some weird Spider-Verse thing.
Okay.
Yeah.
But you know what isn't going to be in a weird side multiverse?
Jesus Christ.
The Disney Plus series Winter Soldier and Falcon, because that's 100% canon, baby.
Sure is.
Oh yeah, it is.
We have information about the cast. The cast of Winter Soldier and Falcon is expanding. It's going to bring in more people from the MCU outside of Anthony Mackie and Sebastian Stan.
Ooh, cool.
Daniel Bruhl, who played Zemo
Mm-hmm.
in Civil War, and Emily Van Camp, who played Agent 13 Sharon Carter
Ooh.
in the Captain America films, are both joining the Winter Soldier Falcon show.
Very cool.
Oh.
So it's 6 episodes. We know who the director is. We know who's writing it.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm curious now on what the story is going to be like.
I liked that leak that you were talking about last week, Christian.
Yeah, so...
Or like that rumor, I guess.
If you didn't watch, and Pat, if you weren't... Oh, I don't think you were there yet, but... So there was this sheet of leaked information, quote unquote. It could be false. That gave a lot of details.
I did see that. I saw you retweet that. Yeah.
Yeah, it gave a lot of details about upcoming Marvel projects. Like, I don't know how legitimate it is, but one of the things was talking about the plot of the Winter Soldier Falcon show would be about Sam having to earn being Captain America because the government was like, hey, he didn't have any right to give the shield to you. We have a guy. So, story could be about that. I don't know. Interesting to bring Daniel Bruhl back. I can't imagine he's going to escape from prison or anything. Maybe there's like some Hannibal Lecter style visiting him.
That's what I imagine.
Yeah.
There was that rumor for... I don't even know if it was a rumor. For The Dark Knight Rises that Bane was going to go into Blackgate Prison and free the prisoners, and he would get to the Joker's cell and he'd be like, not that one, and just leave him inside and kind of explain away. That never came to me, but I mean, nothing, I don't think anything like that will happen, but something like a visit, like a Hannibal Lecter visit, like you said, would be kind of what I imagine would be going on.
That would be really cool, but I also would like, because like that character was Demu. I forget his name.
Zemo.
Zemo. He was that like mastermind character. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
he won.
He could easily just be pulling some strings that like.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
Like it's been how many years since he got arrested at this point? Probably like 6 or 7 in the MCU.
They're picking
timeline.
up. Yeah.
He could have had some long-term plan while he was in there, just develop.
Maybe, yeah, that'd be interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I'm interested to see, Agent 13.
Yeah.
Because they totally ignored her in Infinity War and Endgame. Right? I mean, rightfully so, because those movies, especially Endgame, was for Peggy Carter.
Yeah.
And it's not like Cap really had like a relationship with her.
Oh, the Russos will tell you otherwise.
Well, that's silly. They shared a kiss and no one liked it, and they kind of just said goodbye to her, which was pretty cool. Like, I mean, she's a cool character, but we didn't need that relationship. Definitely very shoehorned.
Yeah, I'm curious to see if that gets thrown onto either one of these two characters, Winter Soldier or Falcon.
Knowing Hollywood, probably.
Yeah,
probably
I don't know.
the Winter Soldier, if anybody.
Yeah. Because he has a connection to Cap, more so, I feel, so.
Yeah, and I also feel like it'll be like, oh, can this like troubled man who's committed murder a bunch settle down and have a family? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I could see something like that. I think they have a female director, so I'm hoping that she gets a little bit better treatment than she has the past couple, because I feel like a lot, like Black Widow in the Russo's Captain America films is amazing. I love that's my favorite version of that character.
Mm-hmm.
So it would be nice to see even though Black Widow's not like a super like human, having a normal CIA agent getting like a badass upgrade would be cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe.
But
maybe she's the new Black Widow. Who knows?
Maybe. That wraps news. We're talking Civil War right now, and in the second half of the show, we are going to be discussing Civil War, the Marvel Comics Civil War. I almost said Captain America Civil War. I had to stop myself.
Wait a minute. You guys aren't the real Avengers.
First off, I made the transition with Captain America Civil War in mind. I would like to hold comparisons until the end of the review discussion.
Okay.
Just for the sake of giving the book its own evaluation.
Yes.
Because I feel like this is an almost completely separate entity of writing.
The only thing that is similar is Cap versus Iron Man and like the divisions between the Avengers. That's kind of it.
Yeah.
I'll argue that, but we'll save it for later.
Yeah.
I think I get it. Yeah.
Okay. So kicking things off, the book is introduced following a group of mutants, I think, or some sort of lower tier characters in the Marvel universe.
Yeah.
Raiding, like attacking this supervillain hideout on their day off for a reality show, which is already a weird concept.
Yeah.
And then goes wrong, and one of the guys blows up a school. And that's the inciting incident of the conflict between Cap and Tony.
Which I think is an amazing motivator for all these events to occur.
Yeah, that panel.
Oh my god.
That explosion just swallowing the silhouettes of the kids, that was haunting.
And immediately after that, Cap and Iron Man and all the Avengers just like
In the rubble,
very solemnly cleaning up that mess and finding people underneath the rubble. I made, I mean, I'm not the only one, but like, it's the New Warriors. It's called that team.
The team
of the young.
Which team?
The young
ones that were on the reality
superheroes.
show.
Is it
Okay.
New Warriors, something like that?
I didn't know if the New Warriors were the hero team or the villain team from that encounter. So I'm not sure.
So that like superhero team reminded me of the Teen Titans, and
Okay.
I kind of paired them together in my mind, and I was like, wow, what would Batman be doing in this situation? I know it's a Marvel show, but God, that really made me very upset. And you can clearly see Tony's, and we'll talk later on about his motivations, but like you can see why he would want this to happen.
Yeah, I agree. This portrayal of Tony I like because he's very driven on the ends justify the means. And I feel like that's just a character trait that works well with my idea of who Tony is. So seeing it in this, I feel like it wasn't like cold and calculating. He was just very much like, there's no option here. It's just this.
Yeah, definitely.
Whereas
What was we? Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. Go
yeah,
ahead.
Steve Rogers and his arc wasn't a huge fan of.
Yeah, I couldn't really see his side as much as I could Tony's. I found myself siding more, I guess, with Tony.
Yeah.
And I mean, I didn't fully 100% support either side.
Yeah, like
but
some of the things that he did, I wasn't on board with, but
yeah,
his ideals about the entire situation, I was like, this makes sense. I see the logic here. I see
Me
where
too.
you're going. But with Cap, it was just like, what are you doing?
I think the thing that I latched onto with Cap, but like even after a while, I was like, I don't really know if I support it, is him being asked to hunt down like people he like knows and loves, and it's like, well, that's not an easy thing to do, and he doesn't want to do that. So I can understand that from that perspective.
Even that scene, like, the whole thing just felt like Stark's story felt real, but his story didn't. And the fact with the thing that like you have that moment right there where he's like, oh, I don't want to hunt down my friends, but then like a page later he's surfing on a jet.
Yeah,
it just felt odd to me. I was like, you can't do that.
Not very grounded in reality.
Yeah, I don't necessarily have a problem with any of the actual like situational things that happened. It was more of Cap just not feeling like he had any. I think there's a scene where Spider-Man's like, oh, you would never do this, and he's like, don't talk to me about my morals. I feel like a lot of this stuff, at least in my head, even from like the very little comic book Captain America I know of, I feel like it's like a weird thing that he's so adamant about without really having much to back it up, because it's like what you said, he felt betrayed by S.H.I.E.L.D., which I got, and I was like, okay, that makes sense. But I don't know, I feel like it might have just been because before I read this, my only impression was, oh, it's about revealing their identities versus not, and I feel like that never really got touched on.
So I don't think they had to. They didn't have to reveal their identities to the public, right? Spider-Man just chose to do that as like a symbol, right?
Right.
It was just reveal your identities on a piece of paper to the government.
Yeah.
Okay. Honestly, I feel like it's a small price to pay.
Yeah.
The issue doesn't seem it doesn't seem really like it's that much of a conflict. Like, you have to let the government know you're the superhero.
Yeah.
And what was weird to me was, like, Steve Rogers as a character, he doesn't have that same, like, incentive to stay secretive that, like, Peter Parker would have.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Which made it weird for me that he's the one that made the stand.
Yeah, I think it's like what Jack said. The thing that made him make that stand was because he saw S.H.I.E.L.D. and the government taking away the right for people like Spider-Man to be able to hide it.
Okay, yeah, I guess that's a fair point to make.
Because if his whole thing is about standing for freedoms and freedom to choose and people's agency, I understand him fighting for that, but like they never really thread that along. It's kind of just him fighting because.
Yeah, he very much wants to grasp onto like the old way of things. Like Captain America is obviously very conservative in this. Like you can tell he's like very conservative in this representation, as in most representations of Cap, because he's from the 40s, so it makes sense.
I also feel like he wasn't himself, because he fought dirty a little bit. He slipped Tony that EMP when they were shaking hands.
He did at the end, yeah. Or actually, you're right, and even in the
first fight.
Yeah.
And it was weird because it seemed like it was a peace offering, and then all of a sudden, the iron armor just falls to the ground.
It's weird. I feel like Captain America, not even talking about like Chris Evans' Captain America, just the idea of Captain America, like diplomacy, feels like something he'd be open to.
Oh yeah.
You know.
And he just completely threw that one out the window.
Yeah, like stabbed him in the back. He's like, "All right, now go." It's like a very weird move, very weird decision for Steve Rogers.
And that is the definition of American values right there.
Yeah.
Just get them while them down.
Can I ask a question about this comic?
Sure.
Is this based in a continuity of comics at the time?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So this is fully in canon with the Marvel comic universe.
So this was like an event.
Yes.
Okay.
A huge event. This impacted everything. This is like, I think this whole Civil War event sort of revitalized interest in Marvel.
Okay.
I'm not too sure, because I think it was around this time like people were getting tired of things, and I think.
When was it published?
I want to say 2005.
2005 or 6. Yeah.
Which is right before. That's probably in the planning phase of the MCU too, which is kind of cool.
Yeah, 2008. I could see them like starting for Iron Man, and then I think the Marvel Ultimate line was around in this time, and people loved that, from what I'm familiar with at least, which was like sort of rebooting all the characters with a new attitude and a separate continuity. But this is the main Earth 616, Amazing Fantasy, Spider-Man, all of them.
Okay.
And I think this was sort of an event to sort of revitalize interest in that, like, timeline continuity universe.
Because it seemed very much connected. Like, you had to know that Thor had died already,
right?
And like things like that.
Yeah, there were a lot of characters that they touched on that I was like, not too sure who you are, but you're not doing anything super important. So like you get a shot, like a clear shot of like, hey, this is this character, they're doing this thing. And it's like, okay, cool for them. I don't know who they are, but it's not really a big moment. You know?
I will say that like I ran into the same problem, Christian, where I was like, I don't know who you are, but it was very obviously written comic booky, where it was like, thanks for helping Goliath, and like they use their names a lot, and it's like, okay, now I know who you are. So
and it's funny actually, because Goliath is the character that Lawrence Fishburne played in Ant-Man and the Wasp.
Oh my god!
And that's why Hank's character was like, oh yeah, he's one of my oldest friends, and it's like, oh yeah, that's the guy.
I see.
Oh no way! Damn.
That's cool.
there's some cool stuff in here. Like I appreciated a lot of the pairings of characters I'm familiar with, because there's some of them I don't have exposure to in a comic book format. Like, one of my favorite interactions between characters in this entire book is the Punisher and Captain America.
Oh, I love the Punisher in this.
Yeah, because I'm familiar with the Punisher in different mediums, but it was strange seeing him alongside all these like brightly colored comic book characters, and all of them just giving him weird looks and being like, "Oh no, not him."
Yeah,
and I never really thought about it that way.
Yeah, he's definitely like an outcast in this, and I love that it was him who saved Spider-Man because not that I know, I have never read any like comics with the Punisher and Spider-Man, but I can obviously see them like butting heads.
Oh yeah.
And I thought the Punisher was handled so well in this, and like in a way he was on Cap's side, but no one really wanted him on that side. They're like, we don't really trust you.
He was like a weird uncle.
He's the weirdest uncle, yeah. But I read him totally in the Punisher Netflix voice. I can't remember.
John Bernthal?
Yeah, John Bernthal's voice. Absolutely. Oh my god.
Yeah, I thought the inclusion of Punisher, I liked how much he had to do, even though in the grand scheme of the whole thing, he was only in there for probably like an issue and a half.
Yeah.
But it was cool seeing him play off of these characters that I'm more familiar with. They're like what their ideals are, and it presented the Punisher in a way that I never really thought of. Like, obviously the Punisher is darker, he's not opposed to murdering people, but seeing that clash against someone like Captain America and seeing that comparison between the two of them was awesome.
Oh yeah.
What was cool to see was this is kind of, I'm getting on a different subject, but something we're never going to see in the MCU is nice to see Iron Man versus the Iron Spider.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was really
like
cool.
That's just completely ruled out for us now. So I thought it was cool to see that.
Yeah, it's interesting you bring that up too, because that's similar to the whole like Cap and Punisher, two sides of the same coin with Tony and Peter. Because Peter in this, like, there's not many versions of Peter that I don't like. This one I liked, but it was nice to see him interacting with Tony Stark in a way that like was very firm in his own beliefs. Even though
confrontational.
Yeah, even though I'm like off screen, we know that Tony convinced Peter to be like, hey, if you unmask, this will be a big deal. So he was impressionable there, but seeing him stand for himself and seeing him face off against Tony, I liked personally.
Yeah, I do like how Spider-Man was one of the few heroes to switch sides.
Yeah,
because it made sense after what he'd seen.
Especially since his initial stance was like, if I take my mask off, then my whole family's in danger.
Yeah, right? Like he must have, like what you said, Christian, was off screen, but like that must have been a huge process for him to think about.
And I'm sure, so the version of Civil War we read was the collected issues 1 to 7.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure there's a lot of like supplementary things of as this series was going on. It's like, oh, here's Spider-Man dealing with Civil War in a Spider-Man comic.
Oh, okay.
Here's Captain America dealing with Civil War in a Captain America comic. So I'm sure there's some sort of exploration of the decision process he went through in like Amazing Spider-Man number whatever was running alongside this comic.
Yeah. But
yeah, the way they presented it in the actual Civil War comics 1 to 7, I thought it was done well.
Yeah, definitely. It was just, I mean, I imagine reading it as it came out would be such a huge surprise.
Oh yeah.
Like I forget the exact quote, but like, I'm Peter Parker. Never said that before.
I've been Spider-Man since I was 15 years old.
Yeah. It's like I don't think he's ever said that to the general public ever, right?
Yeah. And I love how it just cut to Jonah and he just fainted.
Yeah.
That was really good.
Oh my god.
What was I gonna say? Did anyone else not like the Iron Spider costume?
I didn't mind it.
I'm indifferent.
That looked a little weird.
I definitely loved when he got his original suit back, because I just love that thing.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, the Iron Spider I know is like kind of love it or hate it.
Mm-hmm.
But I was indifferent.
I think this was the first time I have read several of these heroes in comics, like Iron Man, specifically.
Yeah, Iron Man comics have always been so weird to me.
Mm-hmm.
Because, like, I don't know where I would want to hop on, and, like, this is unfair because it's just me looking from the outside, but I feel like it would just be weird attempts to recreate Robert Downey Jr.'s performance. But with Civil War, I thought they presented him in a interesting way that was distinct and unique and still felt like what I think of when I think of Iron Man.
Iron Man in this seems like he has gone through like the trials and tribulations of he's like reached his arc.
Yeah.
Like he has gone through his drunkenness, he's like gone through addiction and all that. That's what I'm reading into it. I have no clue, but it seems like it, and he seems like he's kind of on top of his game. So like he's coming at this from a perspective where he like knows right from wrong at this point.
Yeah, and he had that line about comparing something to alcoholism, which I was like, oh, he must have already gone through that in this.
Yep.
Now, is it weird for me to say this? I'm still not 100% sure if I'm right on this. But did they downplay Iron Man's unmasking? Because it seemed as if he was masked at the time of the story when that woman in the church was yelling, you financed the Avengers.
Yeah, I don't know.
I
can't really tell because I feel like that would have been a pretty big storyline. Tony Stark is Iron Man.
I think it. I don't know. Has Tony Stark ever been? Has he ever kept a secret identity?
I know just from like basic knowledge of the general Marvel universe that, like in the olden days, Tony Stark is a hidden identity.
Okay.
People think that the Iron Man is Tony Stark's like bodyguard, essentially.
Okay. From this, I think people knew. That's what I read into it, at least.
See, that's how I read it too, and I read Captain America the same way.
I did too.
Captain America had his reveal at the end. He was like, "You're not arresting Captain America. You're arresting Steve Rogers."
I think that was more of a, kind of like a stance or like a way of putting it.
That's how I read it. But now that Pat is saying this, he might be right.
I was like half and half on that one, where I was like, I don't know if he's revealing himself or he's just like basically hanging up the cowl or hanging up the shield.
Also, nobody like in S.H.I.E.L.D. when he's talking with when he's about to be arrested, or they're like, you have to arrest your friends. No one's like Captain Rod. They're all like, it's like he's Captain America. He's not Steve. He's not Mr. Rogers or whatever. He's Mr. Rogers. That's a weird thing to call him. But yeah, like it's never mentioned that he's Steve Rogers until the end when he takes his mask off. So I can't tell if that's like a dramatic moment or if that's just symbolic, like you guys are saying.
I think it might be symbolic, but you could 100% be right. I have no clue.
Yeah, I don't know what the canon is here, because again, we're hopping into an event that happened 10 or so years ago in comics that we weren't reading at the time.
Yeah.
So we're just reading it as it's presented. But I want to talk about a couple standout moments that I really liked. And if you guys have any, just shout them out. I loved the funeral scene for Goliath.
Oh, yeah.
I thought that was great. I loved the coloring in there, and I loved the art. I loved specifically the end of it with the interaction between Tony and was it Miriam, the name of the woman who returned a couple times?
Yep.
Yeah.
And giving him the toy. I liked that moment a lot.
To remind you what you're fighting for.
Yeah, I really liked that.
Yeah, definitely. The giant grave.
Yeah, that was a powerful image. Yeah, just seeing that giant hole that they dug, all those cranes.
Yeah, and they had that conversation that I think it was him and Happy had, where they're like, "Oh, we couldn't. Too bad we couldn't shrink him down for his family."
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of any of the scenes I liked. I guess that Steve Rogers panel was something I really liked, where he said, "I'm Steve Rogers."
Yeah.
Like that realization of like, oh, we are the heroes and we just destroyed an entire city. I feel like it's kind of epitomized in that one frame.
Yeah, I agree. One of the other things that I really liked too, this was like a smaller, like a funny, or not even funny, it was just like a really cool moment. I read it and I was like, oh, okay, yeah. When Daredevil got arrested, and I took a picture of it. I can read the there's a guard escorting him. He's talking to Tony. He's like, actually, he hasn't said a word, but he has a silver dollar under his tongue. He said he's been saving it for you. Tony takes it, and he's like, I don't understand. And Daredevil's just like, guess that makes 31 pieces of silver you've got now, huh? Sleep well, Judas. I was like, damn.
Yeah.
He's getting biblical.
Oh yeah.
That's like a rap battle line.
That was really good. That was awesome. I loved that. That was cool.
I loved seeing the characters I only know from either movies or TV represented here. Like Daredevil was one of them. Because Daredevil I only know from the Netflix show. Same with the Punisher in a way. So it was cool seeing them interact with characters I know from the MCU that are represented on paper. I think it's really cool.
Yeah, definitely. I think, again, also I'm reading a couple of these characters for the first time. Daredevil, I've read a couple issues of the current run, which I kind of like. It's like taking its time. I'm behind still, but I want to get back to it because it is cool seeing Matt Murdock in a different light. So I think that was a good decision about picking Civil War this week, about just getting introduced to how these characters can be portrayed in comics. And if there's any that you latched onto, like the Punisher or like Daredevil, that gives you a incentive to check out some of their stuff from around the same time or now.
What I really liked about this conflict was the use of supervillains.
Oh yeah.
And how they weren't the villains of it. Like each other were each other's villains, obviously. But it was cool how each side kind of, or like at one point, Tony's side used villains.
Yeah.
And then Cap's team was like considering using villains. Obviously, the Punisher
shot him dead.
Killed them before that happened. But it was really interesting that they both took the villains took sides and were like, well, like we don't want this to happen. Let's join Cap's team, or well, we're getting paid to do this, or we can just mess around and beat up Spider-Man if we want. So let's join Tony's team.
Suicide Squad style.
Yeah, it was really interesting.
Yeah, it was. Because I feel like with Marvel, not a lot of the... I mean, this is different now with stuff like Venom that's more anti-hero, but, like, seeing the villains stand alongside the heroes, I think especially with Cap's, like that scene with Cap and Punisher and them, really set the tone for the end of the book. And, again, talking about how I wasn't a huge fan of Steve's arc, the end, wasn't feeling it. It just felt like it was out of nowhere. It's like, yeah, you have been a doofus this entire time. Like, why? This isn't Captain America.
See,
you know?
Sorry, Pat, you go.
I was gonna say a lot of it felt out of character.
Yeah.
It's just I don't like. What was weird was seeing Cap get like mad about something that wasn't like noble. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like first off, I always like whenever I picture Captain America, like I know I'm making a comparison earlier, but it's always to like Steve Rogers in the MCU. Like he gets pissed, but he's always like calm and collected most of the time. You know what I mean? Just doing the mission at hand. And this time it just seemed very like, at a certain point, it just seemed personal. That like it was just to a point where I hated Captain America.
Yeah,
I don't know if I'm making sense, but like I guess what I'm trying to say is that he like it didn't feel like Captain America. He was guy.
I think it would have been fine if it didn't feel like Captain America, if it was just consistent. Because I feel like it was kind of all over the place with the like his goal, his motivations, and then at the end he was just like, "Oh, I'm fighting for nothing." It's like, yeah, you've been fighting for nothing since like issue 3.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, what my one thing I want to know is I know in this storyline at some point, Cap becomes a secret like Hydra operative because he's brainwashed or something.
That's way down the line, isn't it?
Is it way down? Okay.
I think so.
Then I'm off. I'm not your go-to source for this stuff.
But yeah, Jack, how did you feel about the Cap ending?
I wrote down that I thought it was very powerful. Because
I like the actual like the panels of him accepting it. I like that, but it was just like the character choice.
Yeah, I think the imagery itself is amazing. Cap like looking around, being stopped by civilians and like firefighters and things like that. He's like, whoa, like that's when he realizes like, oh wow, I absolutely messed up. Like when he's being stopped by the people he's trying to protect, I thought that was powerful personally, because he realized that's the point where he realized he messed up. And I think like the panel showing him in tears and all that, I think that was pretty powerful. I really liked seeing that.
The city block too they showed, or just Midtown or wherever they were, that was just on fire and burning.
Absolutely messed up, yeah.
Interesting comparison when you think about the beginning when we were talking about the bomb explosion that went off.
That's true, yeah.
Not to the same extent, but like I think it's drawn in a similar angle, so it's like calling back to that destruction.
Yeah,
and then
for sure.
he realizes like, oh, we're doing the thing we're trying to stop.
Yeah.
So the actual moment I liked, it was just the choice there and the story, the repercussions of it I didn't love.
Speaking of like under or like wrong character development or whatever, I don't know why I'm bad with words. Human Torch got a raw deal. He just got beat up by some people at a bar. Like he was hospitalized by just a guy at a bar.
Well, caught him off guard too, because he was sort of just confused also.
Still, I don't see that happening. I don't see the Human Torch getting absolutely worked in a bar.
We talked a bit about characters we're experiencing in comics for the first time.
Yeah.
I don't have a huge experience in general, not just in comics, with the Fantastic Four.
I don't either.
And I was surprised at how much I did not like Reed Richards.
Yeah, he is kind of the reason Goliath is dead.
Yeah.
Yeah, he seemed like kind of the evil scientist, or like the mad scientist in this. Yeah.
And he treated Sue awfully.
Oh, absolutely.
That was bad.
He's very like unemotional about the things he's doing until the very end.
Exactly.
Where you see him writing the letter.
I think it was an interesting choice to frame some of the main plot development in the entire book through the perspective of Sue and Reed, because obviously the Fantastic Four and their history with Marvel is a huge deal. Now, not so much. But at the time of Civil War, and this was after those two Fantastic Four movies that I guess made some money, they really wanted to show these two prominent characters in their history dealing with this situation and breaking up, not on the scale of Cap and Iron Man, but like if you account for their history of however many years, that was probably a bigger deal than how Captain America and Tony are fighting, you know?
Yeah, I think so. But yeah, again, personally, I don't have any experience with Fantastic Four.
Yeah.
Christian, did you want to get into comparisons?
Yeah. So that was the last note I had about the actual comic. So, do you guys want to put a score on it now or after?
Ooh.
I would like to go through comparisons first.
Okay.
Yeah, let's do that.
So
Can I list out because I found a lot. I personally think I found a lot.
Sure.
I think I did a good job. Okay. Civil War kind of started with this whole there were like some people on a mission. You know what I mean? Because it was like Cap and Scarlet Witch, and they were fighting the guy who played the Shield agent who got the
Crossbones.
Yeah. It started with that. It was like a mission that they were overly confident in that went horribly. That kind of set off the whole issue. Next, the other thing I found was, you know how Tony Stark was in the funeral and the woman spat in his face, and then everyone kind of gave him hell for allowing this kind of behavior to happen.
Yeah.
Very similar to the woman who was like my son was a good boy and he died in Sokovia doing social work. That might be all I got.
So one of the other things I wanted to ask you guys was, I think we talked about this a little bit on Civil War, the review for the film. We had differing stances on the Sokovia Accords, the repercussions of them, and just in general the concept of the consequences for them acting on their own. But I feel like the story they told in the MCU, it just felt more satisfying, even though a lot of Civil War focused on these heroes we love getting completely destroyed.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I think the scope in this story is much greater than the one in Civil War is in the MCU Civil War. Honestly, like the Soviet Accords, I don't feel like it was as necessary as this one was, and I think the motivator of the teen Avengers dying and like hundreds of people in Stanford was a much greater motivator than like obviously people died from the Wakandan embassy, but like it was a lot less, I feel. And then like I feel like a building explosion in the MCU is not out of left field, but they kind of made it that way to like motivate people to go in that direction to sign the accords. So I think the like registration in this makes more sense, but I agree with you. I think the story itself in Civil War MCU is a lot better than this one, I think. Or I think it's more satisfying, like what you're saying.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with you, Jack. That's like the reasoning for the issues I think is superior in the comics, but like the result of these issues is far better in the movie.
Yeah. And what's great about the movie is that no one really wins in the end. Mm-hmm. And this one, Iron Man clearly wins.
Oh, yeah.
And what's great about the MCU Civil War is that I guess technically Iron Man wins. Not really. Like, he gets beaten in the end. And Cap goes away. So, like, they kind of part ways kind of on equal grounds. Like, they win and kind of lose at the same time. And I think that's
what they wanted.
Yeah, they both get what they wanted, and then but they also, like...
They have to deal with it.
Yeah, they deal with the repercussions. I think that's awesome in the MCU.
Yeah, and I think comparing the scope of this with the restraint of the movie, just because of the characters they could use at the time, I feel like it makes the impact of the movie more like emotionally satisfying too.
Yeah.
And it just feels so much more personal. Like, we talked about this earlier. Captain America wasn't really fighting for any... Like, he was fighting for ideas and ideals of other characters. Like, he was defending them by proxy, pretty much. And Tony was sort of standing as this icon. But I feel like that's why I didn't care so much about either of their sides. I cared more about, like, Spider-Man's opinion on things and what the deal was with Punisher and Daredevil and people like that. So, yeah, I think overall I was a little disappointed, but I think I actually just watched Civil War last night, but yeah, I think just the overall aspect of the movie versus the comic, they're going for two separate things, I think, like we talked about, personal versus like grand scheme, game changing storyline. So they both do their own things well, but I kind of like the movie's take on it more.
I think I do too. But what I prefer in the comics, the comic telling of it is his own separate thing. Like, Civil War and MCU is Captain America Civil War.
Yeah.
So in that way, you're kind of already like, and the movie is skewed to show Captain America's side more so than anyone else's. Right. And I like how it's an Avengers movie if you really think about it. But this story in comics is more, it's like set on its own, right? Like, you can come in with no opinions and leave with a different one, and that's kind of what I like about it.
Yeah, I felt more like I was just watching this happen, like from an outside perspective, than following someone through it. So,
what I also kind of liked about the comic, just one aspect of the comic that I liked, was kind of the idea of government or the government acting as its own entity.
Mm-hmm.
Because for the most part of the movie, Tony Stark was a direct wing of the government, like getting people to sign the Sokovia Accords, which he is in this sense. But there was also that moment when they were in that weird like Marvel version of the Phantom Zone where that was Maria, I think,
Mm-hmm.
was contemplating just closing them all in.
Mm-hmm.
I thought that was kind of a cool look, like kind of like how in the first Avengers movie they're sending a nuke to Manhattan.
Yeah.
They get to the point where it's like, oh, screw them, let's just solve it for everybody else.
Right.
It would have if they had that aspect in Germany, but it's still a great, like my favorite MCU movie, so it's fine.
Yeah. And what you were kind of like getting at, Pat, I feel like there's greater stakes in this one than the MCU one is. Like, there's more room for error in this story, and people die in this story. Like, that really doesn't happen in Civil War. Like, you were making the comparison of Goliath and Rhodey, which is very, very true. But like, no one really dies in the MCU telling of it, and there's even parts where they're not really fighting as hard as they can be. Like, Hawkeye and Black Widow are fighting, and then Scarlet Witch comes in and is like, "You're pulling your punches." Mm-hmm. But in this book, like, people are killing each other and like really fighting for what they believe in. I kind of like that.
Yeah, and then also like the reasoning for the whole thing starting is kind of, I feel like it's like, for example, they were way more irresponsible in the comic book telling of the story as compared to the movie telling, where like in the movie it was Cap, he was on scene dealing with an actual threat,
Mm-hmm.
and in the comic book it was like part of a reality TV show.
Yeah, it was like Jackass.
Yeah, it was like Jackass. Yeah.
It seems like it's a good comparison to Jackass. It does seem like it's like the superheroes are being far more irresponsible.
Yeah.
Way more reasoning behind it.
That all happened out of vanity. Like, those heroes wanted to make a show about them being cool, and I don't know. I think that there's a really cool image there of people doing this for the fame of it rather than like the duty of it. And,
yeah, selfish.
Yeah, very selfish.
Yeah, I agree. And I think obviously the MCU was again restricted with aspects like that because it is such a smaller scope, all things considered, when you compare the huge legacy of the Marvel comic universe that was changed by this event. So but yeah, I thought it was pretty good. I thought it was good choice. I enjoyed a lot of the art, and you want to review it, give it a score?
Sure.
Let's go. Who should go first?
I might be the highest.
Okay.
I'm gonna go 7.8.
7 point. Okay, so are we fine doing like points besides 0 and 5?
I think 0 and 5 is probably best. Easiest.
Okay.
Well, I'll go 8. I'll round it up to 8.
Okay.
Okay.
I think I'll probably be the highest. I'm gonna go 9. I think it's on par with Spider-Man Blue with me. I really enjoyed reading this.
Interesting. Okay. I think I'm settling around a 7.
Okay.
If we were doing points, I probably would have done 6.8, but I rounded up.
Yeah.
So the official Excelsior review of Civil War Marvel Comics event, 8.
Pretty good.
There we go.
7, 8, 9. That was actually perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah, that worked out. So yeah, I want to follow up. Last week I asked you guys this question: did you read it in one sitting?
I read half of it in one sitting.
Okay.
I read like sporadically. I think I read it in like 2 sittings.
Okay.
So.
This is longer than Blue, so I get that. Yeah.
Yeah.
I
could.
Sorry.
No. I can definitely. I definitely could have read this in one sitting. I think.
I did.
Yeah.
I blitzed it too. So.
Mm-hmm. Well, that wraps this review. So keep it posted at Excelsior JC on Twitter. We will post what we're reading for next week on there. Also, you can follow us on Instagram because we have an Instagram by the same @. But if you two would like to plug your Twitter accounts and any other projects, feel free.
Yeah. I am at the P Moron on Twitter. Don't have any other projects going on right now. I want to thank my brother too for sitting quietly the entire show. It's been like an hour and 15 minutes to get to the word. So.
Wow. Honestly, Pat, I thought you were driving.
Oh no.
And I was like, that is incredibly dangerous, but I respect it. You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at FascinatedJack.
All right, solid. And if you're watching us, if you're watching Pat drive, not really, you're on JoyClicks. We have several different shows. E3's coming up. There's going to be a lot of video game coverage coming up. But keep it posted for what we're reading next week. I hope you enjoyed. You can follow the show on Spotify and iTunes if you want to listen to us instead of watch us. And until next time, Excelsior.
Excelsior.
Excelsior.